And to start off this Innovation Day, we'll have like a quick check-in question like we do every time. And this time it is, if you could learn one new professional skill, what would it be? So it could be like a new skill, or it could be like a skill that you already have, but you really wanna, this was like your star skill that you could have in your profession, or just something that you want to improve, then it would be that. So
That's a hard one.
it is.
Okay. Should we have our guest start off? You want to introduce her, Omar?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. So today we're gonna have Roshni speaking. She's a scientific software developer with extensive experience in the fields of data science and software engineering. And she works at the junction of computational and biological sciences, building end-to-end software tools to facilitate the use of data science to advance medical and healthcare technologies. In 2018, she was recognized as a leading voice for climate action by the United Nations for co-founding Wikilimo, a platform built to empower rural agricultural communities. And as a passionate community service volunteer, she's also an advocate for the UN global goals. Today, she's going to be discussing something that I'm pretty excited to hear about is the design spirit, which is a technique that helps individuals and teams quickly get answers to complex challenges. She'll be demonstrating the methodology for the design spirit. So anyone with an idea or problem can follow this unique process to focus their decisions. And I also look forward to hearing her key takeaways from her experience conducting and participating in transformative design spirits and its variations.
Thanks, Omar, for the introduction. I will quickly pull up my slides and get started. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes, perfect. And as always, just a friendly reminder, please mute your mics during the presentation. Just remember to keep that muted. Thank you.
All right, awesome. So I'm Roshni, and I'm here to talk about the design sprint. And I'll make sure that I know a lot of you are not engineers, so I'll make sure that this is something that you can take away and apply to your lives, no matter what kind of idea or problem that you're trying to solve. Right. So what is the design sprint? It's a time-constrained step-by-step process that leverages design thinking. Design thinking was a concept that was invented like 10 years ago by Google Ventures, and now it's been adopted by a lot of teams worldwide. To explain further, it might be best to drop the design part of the term just because it causes a lot of confusion. Sprints are not just for designers or for tech companies, it's for any team that's trying to work on a difficult problem. The problem could be anything really. And a lot of times you have potentially lucrative or costly problems that you don't want to just dive right into. You want to test it out. You want to spend a couple of days just thinking about it to ensure that this is something that's worthwhile. And the design sprint is a perfect opportunity for you to kind of just prototype something that's in your head. And this process has been around for like a while now. It's been battle tested by a lot of companies. Like I've heard that Slack, Airbnb, NASA have used it for a variety of different problems. So it's a proven method that just works. And in general, it's aimed at like reducing risk when bringing an idea to life. We have a lot of problems in this world, right? Like some of them are like big, hairy problems. Some of them are little annoying problems. And sometimes you just don't know how to approach a problem and what kind of solution is going to work. So coming out of the design sprint, you can expect to have more clarity. You can expect to have the entire team more aligned and on the same page with what you're about to work on. And just in general, like better focus and what they call engineered focus, because you just follow this methodology that's been prescribed to you. So yeah, what goes into this? So now there are different phases of design thinking. It's a human-centric methodology, which means that it's focused on the user. They make sure that you actually understand the problem before diving into it. So you come up with user personas or user stories, like they do in agile methodologies, to kind of structure the problem into first understanding it, sketching out different, defining, diverging different. Sorry, I'm hearing an echo. Is the audio fine on your end?
Yeah, sorry. I think just a reminder, remember to mute your mics. I think it might have just been some feedback.
Okay. All right. So the phases are understanding the problem, sketching out solutions, making the team diverge, and coming up with a stack of different solutions, deciding on which one is the most optimum, prototyping, wireframing, and finally testing and validation. So the flow is generally in this order, but in reality, it's never like a linear process. Sometimes all these steps are kind of running in parallel, and you take insights from like one stage and you go back and revise something that you previously thought. Or for example, sometimes you like learn more about some user during the testing and validation phase, and then you go back to the drawing board to ideate on more solutions. And then the phases can be split up into any number of days. Usually it's a 5-day process in the sprints that I've done before, but it can be like anything between 2 to 5 days. So I'll go through these like days or steps in order in greater depth so you can understand the activities that they entail. So on day one, I think day one is the hardest part because you don't know where to start. The best suggestion is to start at the end, look at the bigger picture, set a long-term goal, and then this allows you to get a general feel for the problem space. And then once you start talking to more people, like talk to the stakeholders, talk to the experts, they give you ideas, they give you like what they need, and you formulate all the suggested requirements into a set of different, like a list of requirements, and you formulate them into what's called the how might we technique. So this is a tool, like how might we is a technique that's used to brainstorm solutions. And specifically how you do this is you rephrase the known challenges as a question, beginning with how might we. So the question is posed not as a negative connotation as a challenge, but more so as a positive inspiration, like how could we do this or how could we do that? And the way you formulate your sentence is, how might we enable a particular user group to do some problem or solve some problem while something is happening? And the key to how might we question is, I mean, there's no perfect how might we question for any challenge, but you don't want to go too broad or you don't want to be too narrow either, because it doesn't really help in moving forward. So like if I were to give you an example, a broad how might we question would be like, how might we enable people to solve climate change while global carbon emissions are increasing rapidly? This is way too broad because you can't just solve climate change in one sprint. But you can take up like a specific feature or a specific service from your solution and turn that into a how might we question. So something a bit more narrow would be like, how might we incentivize people to transition into using public transport while it could be a slow way to get to work? So this is a start, like something you can start working with. I hope the example was a little more useful and tangible. So once you have like a list of how might we questions, you consolidate everything and you set the scope of the sprint, like which how might we question or set of questions or category of questions do we want to solve in these 5 days? And you go into the second day hoping to achieve, just work on that specific part of the problem. Step 2 or day 2 is sketching. So you start, again, not a lot of us are designers, so this could be a little intimidating, but it's important to actually draw out your ideas on a whiteboard or simply like a piece of paper, just to get your creativity to flow. You start the day with lightning demos. Now, lightning demos are just going through existing problems in the space or competitors to see what they have out there, and then what you don't like about those ideas or what you do like about those ideas, to figure out what exactly you want to keep in your particular solution. And you present that to your team, right? Typically, the design sprint is like conducted by a team of like 5 to 10 people, and then different people have different roles within the sprint team, and then every person gets a chance to put out a demonstration to everybody else in the team, and then you can like split up different products, and then everybody covers like one outstanding solution in the space, so you get like an overview, like a wholesome picture of what's out there. The next is a mind map. So it's like a quiet 10 minutes where you just think, you take a piece of paper and you just scribble things that come to your mind. And then once you're kind of in the flow, you attempt a crazy 8, which is honestly a little bit crazy. They're also called speedy 8s. It's like this super fast sketching exercise where you're given 8 minutes to draw 8 different versions of your ideas. And it could be anything. Like it could be like a layout of a website, it could be like a product page, it could be like a physical model of something that you want to build. And the focus here is not quality but quantity, and they make you do this in 8 minutes so that your thoughts really get distilled over the 8 iterations and you have no time to overthink. So the things that actually matter in your solution naturally like surface up to you, and you leverage like your subconscious inner mind. Again, like this is a little bit crazy, but it actually works. All you need is like a pen, a paper, and a timer. I suggest you to try it sometime. Even outside of the design sprint, it works. This is an animation that I found about a lightning demo. So typically you take a whiteboard, you have the sprint around the room, and then you like have sticky notes describing like things you liked and didn't like about products. This is an example of a crazy 8. So you just take a piece of paper, you fold it 4 times, you have 8 different divisions, and you make like super low fidelity sketches of what you're thinking about. Moving on to step 3. So day 3 is decision day. Now that you have like so many ideas from your crazy 8s, from mild to wild, you have like a full stack of different types of solutions. Which is great, but it's also a problem because you can't prototype or test them all. So you need to narrow it down into like a solid plan. And what you do is you vote on them because you have several people in the team. You can follow like a weighted structured voting process where everything, like all the solutions could be anonymized, stuck to a board. People go around, take their little voting dots and just pin them on different aspects of things that they liked. That helps you kind of narrow it down. You put on your thinking hats, you think like optimistically, pessimistically, and you just weave the most practical features together. So this helps in coming up with a storyboard. So all your different features, essentially like a product is going to have several different features, and there's going to be a flow. Like if it's a technical product, then a service or a user is going to come get introduced on the first page and then interact with this product at different levels with the different features. So it's important that you weave all these things together, and there's like a flow from start to end. This storyboard that you come up with on your 3rd day is also the starting point for day 4, which is prototype phase. This is, the GIF isn't rendering, but this is an example of like the voting process. So you have like all these different sticky notes up on the wall, and then anonymously you go around and just vote on like specific parts of a design that you like, and then that gets prioritized in the final storyboard. Okay, day 4, which is prototyping. You can think of prototyping, at least in the science world, as like a hypothesis or an experiment that you want to test. Because most of the time you don't want to just ship out the first solution that comes to your mind. There's like a lot of assumptions that you might have made or things you might have missed when you were making this, first draft. So you want to test on it first, and the prototype is a good way to just come up with like a scrappy, scaled down version of the product. and then you have day 4 to kind of refine this and get feedback on it. So prototyping is also a lot of fun. There are tools out there that allow you to add animations to your prototypes. So all your different steps in your storyboard
can you manage the time?
Different steps in your storyboard can actually be strung together using the animations available. One such tool that I really like to use is called Figma, and it really helps bring your ideas to life and adds like authentic animations. Just like Figma, there's like various other tools out there. So not going to be too opinionated about Figma, but there's like a whole myriads of tools available to wireframe your product. And you also want to come up with a script on day 4, because when you test on day 5 with your users, you want to be able to just walk them through the entire prototype without any interruptions. That brings us to day 5, or step 5, which is a day dedicated just to testing. So the prototype that you came up with on day 4 would be used to validate, would be validated against the end users. Some of these users could be people that you interviewed on day 1, and then it comes back in like a full circle, because on day 1 you about their needs, and on day 5 you show them like something that you built. And it could go both ways. Like sometimes a user sees something that you built and they'd be like, I hate it, I don't want to use it. Or they could be like, I mean, this is something that seems useful to me. So I mean, either way, it's useful for you, because you want critical feedback and you want their unbiased opinion on what you've built to ensure that people are actually going to use it. And also, it's like in a super early stage, so it's easy to scrap everything and just start all over again if people don't like it. Sometimes you get new ideas from users while they're interacting with your product, and you might want to go back 2 stages and ideate again, sketch again, and come back to the user in a couple of days. But as I said, it's not always a linear process. Testing is also like really fun because you really see like it makes the entire sprint worthwhile, because you built something and you finally get to see how the user reacts when they see it. So you really learn by seeing them react and interact with your showcase. Finally, from day 5, you have a lot of notes. Well, you have a lot of notes from all the days. You want to keep them. You want to preserve them, because if you do decide to go ahead with this idea of yours, you're going to need them. It could be a lot of sticky notes, so you might want to just sit down and categorize them and think over them. Just remove the duplicates so that when you're looking back, you would know where to find what you're looking for. You also want to think about what went right or what went wrong during the sprint. The design sprint usually works for all sorts of teams and problems, but sometimes you might want to modify it a little bit. Or say you're into this project, a couple of months later, you're ideating on a new feature and you want to do the design sprint all over again. So this time you want to make sure that you noted down what went right or wrong, or if there's like a particular step that you didn't want to do anymore. Like sometimes the sketching is not needed if it's not really a design thing. It's just like a concept that you're ideating on. So then you can totally remove day 3 and just have a 4-day sprint. You also want to think about your goal and whether you achieved it. Sometimes the goal that you came up with on day 1 need not have been achieved by day 5, but you got sidetracked and you came up with something completely different. But it was useful. So this is also something that you might want to retrospect on, like, was the how might we question formulation actually accurate, or is there something that you might want to think about? And lastly, were the users happy? Like, is this something that you want to like bring to the market, or is this something that you want to continue just brainstorming about? Now, In reality now with COVID, like a lot of design sprints have to be virtual. The first time I did a design sprint was like in March 2020, which was a great time. Like it was just before COVID, and my team was able to just like find a empty space outside of our usual workplace that allowed us to really like get out of the usual multitasking mode that we're in, focus on one thing, and just like spend time with each other working on this sprint. But now, of course, like that's not possible anymore. But that doesn't mean you can't do the design sprint, or that doesn't mean it won't be as fun, because there's so many tools out there now that allow you to collaborate on ideas. So there's Figma that I mentioned before, which is specifically used for wireframing and creating these animated prototypes. You also have Miro, which is a tool that allows you to like drag and drop sticky notes on diagrams, allows you to silently vote on ideas. And they also have like a variety of other templates within Miro that you can use just to create, say, a customer engagement affinity diagram, or just in general, like the workflow that the user is going to use during while interacting with the product. There's also Trello, which is like a Kanban style task management app. So if you have a set of activities over the course of the day, then you might want to use just like a task management to kind of assign things to people or just cross them off when you're done. There is an official sprint book marketed by Jake Knapp, who was said to be like the inventor of the design sprint. So that might be something that you want to read. And there's also a website called sprintstories.com where people who do design sprints kind of blog about their experience and then send it to Jake Knapp, who publishes it on sprintstories.com. I've done that before. You can also find like my design sprint experience on Sprint Stories. And it's a good place to browse on different types of problems. Like you'll find problems where people are working on, say, like sustainability. You also find people who are working on like 3D printing, so you'll see physical models of stuff they've built. Or in the medical industry, like recently I saw this post about a set of doctors and technicians who work in the ER that are doing a design sprint about how they can triage the stuff that they have during COVID. So it's really like a very versatile process. And while I do put it in a way that it's kind of like a subscribed method that you just follow these steps and you trust the process and it'll work, which did give me like some amount of hesitation when I initially started. But I must say, like, it was very enjoyable experience and it worked. Here's an example of a template that you can also find, which would be really useful during a virtual design sprint. So they have the 5 days kind of mapped out for you and you just follow the steps. You can find this on Miro and a bunch of other websites as well. Closing thoughts. Well, the best parts were that it was really fun. Usually, like my team back at work, we just talk business most of the time in reality, and you don't get a chance to just like just brainstorm with your colleagues on something. So it was a lot of fun. We got to get out of the office, and like it was just a different way to tackle the problems that we usually solve. The entire experience also like caused us to bond even better. So just like it's a nice icebreaker for a new team, or getting a team on the same page about a new phase that you're starting in a project. The engineered focus and enhanced creativity is true. I also had a lot of like mixed expectations and skepticism about the process, because like the design sprint is usually sold by tech companies as like this pop concept where successful people with like cool marketing teams are able to just do the design sprint and find a solution that works. But honestly, design sprint really changed the way like I think about problems. A lot of times when I'm unsure about problems, I just followed like a unofficial design sprint by myself, and it works. I've also done like a remote hackathon or a design-a-thon last year where three people who I've actually never met before were in 3 different time zones, and we just followed the design process to come up with a solution in 72 hours, and it worked. The last thing I want to say is that it's not just for product people or like tech companies, like I said before. I come from like a scientific computing or like an academic background. And most of the time, we don't focus on things like product specifications or design at all, really. We just focus on the technical aspects, or the scientific aspects. But a big takeaway for me is that it actually is really important to think about product when you're building a product or a service, because that's the way the user is actually going to interact with it. So it was nice to have that perspective. Yeah, I will leave you with that, and I'm also happy to answer any questions.